So now we're in the last section of the basics of Fiverr. One thing I really wanted to touch on is actually going into more detail around the pros and cons of Fiverr. Now, there are loads and loads of articles online that talk about why it's bad for the freelancing economy, and I can actually really understand why this is true. Now, Fiverr, when it was first born in 2010, literally sold their services for $5 each, and it was actually really hard to make a decent income. And when people are selling logos for $5, for example, it really devalues the graphic design industry. And it's similar for copywriting. It can be a very specialized skill and actually can cost quite a lot of money in the real world. But on Fiverr, it made it very cheap and very accessible. But it means that small businesses don't pay those professionals and instead pay someone who maybe might outsource it to a country where earnings are a lot lower and therefore they don't need to charge as much. So there's a lot of debate around, is Fiverr devaluing the economy? And I actually did my dissertation at university on gig economies like Fiverr and Odesk and Freelancer, and is it really devaluing the industry? So let's jump into some of the pros of Fiverr and why I really like Fiverr as a platform. The one major thing I really like about the platform, and it's very similar to Airbnb, to YouTube and other websites where they're very big brands that are very well known, and lots of people visit the website every single day. It means that if you're starting as a new business, you don't have to spend money on tons of advertising, working out complicated SEO. All you have to do is set your gig up and you will have thousands of people going to that website every single day and searching for your gig. So you have this ready-made audience of people waiting to go, and it's a really great way to build a business in 2020 when you have this platform full of people already. The second pro that I really like in terms of Fiverr is that it's a great way to make a side income. If 2020 has shown us anything, it's that having a side hustle or a side income can be really important. It gives you that extra little bit of security if anything happened with your normal 9-to-5 job, for example. And even for some Fiverr sellers, they actually work full-time on Fiverr and it's their full-time income, and some of the top-rated sellers can make in excess of 6 figures. So it's a great way to make some serious income. The third pro of why I really like Fiverr is that it's a clean, easy-to-use platform. They've designed it really well and they have evolved it over the years. It's very different from when I first started using it back in 2010. They've definitely spent a lot of money on the design, and their product owners have really thought about how it all works together. It means it's great for buyers and it's great for sellers. And the fourth pro is very similar to number one. Because you're on this ready-made platform with people searching Fiverr every single day, I've noticed quite a bit of a snowball effect. So getting that first order can be quite difficult. But once you get the first order in and the first 5-star review, all of a sudden the second one comes in and the third one and the fourth one. And it has this snowball effect. And I'm actually at a point now where I'm trying to keep the orders down because I've been getting in excess of 15 orders a day at times. And actually for me, that's a little bit too much, but it's definitely snowballing. And I can see how if I allowed it, Fiverr could become a very lucrative full-time income for me. Now, let's touch on some of the cons of Fiverr. I've worked on Fiverr for many years. So the number one con that I guess lets Fiverr down for me is that Fiverr massively favour the buyers, which means that if you're a seller and something goes wrong, often buyers can be really unfair. They could be asking for revisions that are a little bit too much or changing from their initial requirements, and it's wasting your time. But ultimately, if Fiverr favour the buyer, then you're going to have to do that. I've had buyers who have been actually quite horrible in messages and saying, this work I could make on Microsoft Paint, it's rubbish, blah blah, I want a refund straight away. And you have no real protection on Fiverr. It could be that the buyer asks you personally for a refund if you're not happy to give it because you've done them loads of work, you've done them loads of revisions, or it's not in your policy when you're selling your gig. All the buyer has to do is go to Fiverr customer support, and Fiverr customer support will refund it, no questions asked. I've had large orders refunded out of my account back to the buyer because Fiverr customer support have been told, even though the work's been finished and delivered and they have the files, Fiverr have taken that money out of my account and given it back to the buyer. The other thing that can happen, that I think happened once or twice to me, is you could deliver the work, the buyer gets all the files and everything that you've done in your hard work, it all goes through and starts to process, but then the buyer sends a chargeback through PayPal to Fiverr, and then all that happens there is that Fiverr customer support take the money out of your account rather than them taking the hit, and that means that the buyer has got your work and they've also got their money back as a refund for free. The second major con for me is actually Fiverr customer support. Now, it really grinds my gears, and I can't explain how many times I've actually had to contact Fiverr customer support recently. They do all sorts of things. They take down gigs for no reasons, which I always find absolutely baffling. They take gigs down for the smallest of reasons that make no sense. They're very generic reasons as well that aren't tangible or specific to help you get those gigs live again. Whenever I've made a few tweaks or optimizations to my gigs, I've noticed they've dropped out of the rankings, and I've had to get in touch with support to put it back into the rankings again, and that takes another day or two. I've also found that the support take a good day or two to respond to queries as well. So as I've been relying on some of the income from Fiverr, sometimes my sales have dropped off for a good 2 or 3 days, which is not really good when you're relying on Fiverr as an income. And lastly, the big con of Fiverr, and this is more of a tip, I would definitely suggest not putting all of your eggs in one basket. When I see interviews of people who are full-time on Fiverr and making all their income in there, that's quite scary. And you see this with a lot of big YouTubers who try and build audiences outside of the platform. Don't rely on Fiverr too much, because it is so simple for Fiverr customer support to remove your account, and there are lots of horror stories on the Fiverr forums of this happening for not any reason, or it might be that your gig drops out of the rankings completely and your sales drop off of a cliff. If you're relying on Fiverr full time, make sure you have a protection and just don't put your eggs in one basket, because if things do go wrong, if anything happens to Fiverr, if customer support do something weird on your account, which is actually and unfortunately quite common, it means that your income is going to be affected, so bear that in mind as well. So that's the end of the basics of Fiverr. We're actually going to be jumping into the next main section, which is all about attracting visitors.